The smell of frying oil and cheap cologne clung to my uniform as I balanced 3 plates along my forearm. Friday night at Lorenzo's meant full sections, aching feet, and customers who believed their 20% tip entitled them to treat me like less than human. I'd learned to wear a mask, a practiced smile that never reached my eyes, a rehearsed laugh that disguised the exhaustion weighing on my shoulders. "Table 7 needs refills," Marco, the assistant manager, barked as he passed, not bothering to look at me. I nodded, though he couldn't see it, and delivered the pasta dishes to table 12 before grabbing the water pitcher. My fingers trembled slightly, betraying the 6 hours I'd already been on my feet. 3 more to go. Just 3 more hours and I could peel off this stained apron, count my meager tips, and crawl into bed alone. Again. That's when I heard them. 3 young men in expensive suits that couldn't hide their cheap characters, seated at table 7. They'd been difficult from the moment they walked in, demanding different tables twice, sending back drinks because they weren't strong enough, making comments just loud enough for me to hear, but too subtle to report. Finally, the one with gelled back hair said as I approached. His eyes traveled up my body like he was appraising merchandise. "We were about to die of thirst over here." I forced my lips into that practiced smile. "I'm sorry for the wait. Would anyone like anything besides water?" "Depends," said another with a patchy beard and a signet ring that caught the dim restaurant lighting. "What else are you offering?" His friend snickered. I pretended not to understand, though heat crawled up my neck. "Our cocktail special tonight is the blood orange martini, or I can bring you a wine list." "Blood orange," the third one said, pulling out his phone. He had cold eyes, the kind that never warmed even when he smiled. "That matches your face right now." More laughter. I poured their water with unsteady hands, acutely aware of the phone now aimed in my direction. "Are you recording?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "Just taking some pics of the menu." Cold Eyes lied easily, but I could see my reflection in his phone screen, the camera focused on my face. "That's not against the law, is it?" I wanted to say something, to tell them to stop, but Marco was watching from the bar, and I needed this job more than I needed dignity tonight. The rent was due next week, and I was already $200 short. "I'll give you a few more minutes to decide," I managed, retreating to the kitchen where I pressed my back against the cool tile wall and tried to steady my breathing. I hadn't told anyone at Lorenzo's about Alessio. Not because I was ashamed. How could I be ashamed of the man who had saved me in every way a person could be saved? But because the less people knew, the safer we both were. Our worlds were separate for a reason. Mine was this: greasy aprons, sore feet, and plastered-on smiles. His was dark cars with tinted windows, men who called him sir with fearful respect, and meetings that couldn't be discussed when he came home with tension knotted between his shoulder blades. I'd met Alessio 9 months ago when he came into the restaurant with his associates. I'd served their table, nervously aware of how they went quiet when I approached, how the other servers had suddenly found reasons to avoid their section, how Marco had pulled me aside beforehand and whispered, "Don't screw this up. These aren't regular customers." Alessio had barely looked at me that night, but I'd felt his presence like a physical weight in the room. When I'd accidentally spilled water on the table, grazing his expensive suit sleeve, I thought I might faint from terror, but he'd simply moved his arm, dabbed the water with his napkin, and continued his conversation. It wasn't until I was leaving that night, walking to the bus stop in the rain, because I couldn't afford an Uber, that a black SUV had pulled alongside me. The window rolled down, and there he was. "You'll catch pneumonia," he'd said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "Get in." I should have refused. Every warning bell in my body had clanged at once, but something in his eyes, something unexpectedly gentle, had made me open that door. Now, 9 months later, I was his wife, though nobody at Lorenzo's knew it. We'd married in a private ceremony after a whirlwind courtship that felt like being swept up in a beautiful, terrifying storm. Alessio had wanted me to quit my job immediately, but I'd insisted on keeping it. It was the one piece of independence I clung to, the one thing that was still mine, in a life that had transformed so rapidly I sometimes didn't recognize it. "He has a thing for me, I swear," I overheard Patchy Beard say, as I emerged from the kitchen, forcing myself back into character. "Did you see how she looked at me? Dude, she probably has a thing for anyone who tips more than $5. Gelhair replied, These waitress types are all the same. I approached their table again, notepad ready. Have you decided what you'd like to order? Cold Eyes was still recording. I could see the red dot on his phone screen, partially hidden behind the menu he pretended to read. What's good here, sweetheart, besides the view? His eyes lingered on my chest. The chicken parmesan is popular, I said flatly. I bet you're popular too, Patchy Beard said, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back instinctively. Please don't touch me, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. His face darkened. Excuse me? I was just being friendly. 3 chicken parmesans, Cold Eyes decided, finally lowering his phone. And bring us some bread. We've been waiting forever. I nodded and turned away, feeling their eyes burning into my back. When I returned with their bread basket, they fell silent, exchanging glances that made my skin crawl. Is there something on my face? I asked, unable to bear their stares any longer. Just wondering, Gel Hair said, what someone like you does for fun when you're not waiting tables. I have a life outside work like everyone else, I answered cautiously. A life? Cold Eyes repeated, smirking. With Netflix and your cats, I bet. More snickering. I didn't bother correcting them, didn't mention that I spent my free time in a penthouse overlooking the city, learning to navigate Alessio's world of unspoken rules and dangerous subtleties. I didn't tell them that just last weekend, Alessio had flown me to Paris for dinner because I'd mentioned missing the crepes from my semester abroad. Your food will be ready soon, I said instead, turning away. As I walked to check on another table, I heard Cold Eyes say, Got enough for the video? This'll be hilarious online. A chill ran through me. Were they posting videos of me, mocking me publicly? The thought made me nauseous, but what could I do? Ask to see their phones? Call Marco over? He'd side with the customers, he always did. Especially now, when Lorenzo's was struggling to stay afloat and every table counted. The rest of their meal passed in a blur of veiled insults and uncomfortable laughter. When I brought their check, Patchy Beard made a show of examining it closely. Seems high for what we got, he said. Service was mediocre at best. I bit my tongue, knowing that anything I said would only make it worse. They paid with a credit card, leaving a $5 tip on a $180 bill. As they stood to leave, Cold Eyes deliberately knocked his water glass over, sending ice cubes skittering across the table and water streaming onto my shoes. Oops, he said with false concern. Looks like you've got a mess to clean up. I watched them saunter out, laughing among themselves, phones still in hand. My hands shook as I mopped up the water, humiliation burning behind my eyes. I wanted to run after them, to demand they delete whatever they'd recorded. But what good would that do? I'd only give them more ammunition. It wasn't until closing time that I allowed myself to really feel the weight of the night. My back ached, my feet throbbed, and my pride lay in tatters. I counted my tips, $67 for 8 hours of degradation, and changed out of my uniform in the cramped employee bathroom. Outside, the October air bit through my thin jacket. I'd told Alessio I would take an Uber home tonight, but after the pathetic tips, I couldn't justify the expense. The bus would take nearly an hour, but it was only money I couldn't spare. I was halfway to the bus stop when the sleek black Bentley rolled silently alongside me, the window lowered, and Salvatore, Alessio's most trusted driver, looked at me with knowing eyes. Mrs. Vitale, he said respectfully. Mr. Vitale asked me to collect you. Of course Alessio knew. He always knew where I was, what time I finished, when I might try to take the bus instead of the car he insisted on sending. I should have found it suffocating, this constant surveillance. Sometimes I did. But tonight, seeing Salvatore's familiar face after the humiliation of those 3 men, I felt only relief. I slid into the back seat, the warm leather embracing me like an old friend. Thank you, Sal, I said, leaning back and closing my eyes. Rough night? He asked, pulling smoothly away from the curb. Just tired, I replied, not wanting to burden him with the details. The city lights blurred outside the window as we drove toward the high-rise where Alessio and I lived. I thought about the 3 men, wondering what their lives were like. Did they go home to partners who loved them? Did they feel bigger by making others feel small? I would probably never see them again, yet they'd left fingerprints on my sense of self that would take days to wipe clean. When we arrived at the building, the doorman nodded deferentially as I passed. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls, cheeks flushed from the cold, hair escaping its ponytail, eyes hollow with exhaustion. No one looking at me now would connect this woman with the poised, elegant wife who appeared on Alessio's arm at private functions. The duality of my existence sometimes felt like living two separate lives. The penthouse was dark when I entered, just the ambient city light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I slipped off my shoes, padding across the marble foyer toward the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I felt it, the electric presence that always announced Alessio before I saw him. He sat in his leather chair by the window, the city sprawled out below like a carpet of stars. In the dim light, his profile was sharp as a blade, his shoulders broad under his white shirt. He hadn't turned when I entered, but I knew he was acutely aware of my presence. "You're late," he said quietly, still looking out at the night. "The closing took longer than expected," I explained, moving toward him slowly. "I'm sorry I didn't text." Now he turned, his dark eyes finding mine across the room. Something in his expression made my heart stutter. There was anger there, carefully controlled but not directed at me. Something had happened, something beyond my delayed return. "Come here, Teresa," he said, his accent thickening as it always did when he was emotional. I went to him, drawn by the gravity he exerted. When I reached his chair, he pulled me onto his lap, one hand cradling my face with surprising gentleness. "Tell me about your night," he said, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "It was just a normal shift," I said carefully. "Nothing special." His eyes, nearly black in the low light, studied mine. "No difficult customers? No one who made you uncomfortable?" My pulse quickened. How could he know? There are always difficult customers in restaurants, Alessio. It's part of the job. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 3 young men. Table 7. They left you $5 on nearly 200. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. "How did you—" "That's not important." His hand slid to the nape of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. "What's important is what they did. What they said to you. I want to hear it from you, Teresa. All of it." I swallowed hard, trying to process what was happening. Alessio never discussed my work at Lorenzo's in detail. He knew I cherished that small independence, and though I sensed his disapproval, he had respected my wishes, until now. "They were just rude customers," I said, attempting to downplay the situation. "It happens all the time." Alessio's fingers stilled against my neck, his expression unchanged, but his eyes darkening like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "Don't lie to me, Teresa. Not about this." The quiet command in his voice made me shiver. I'd seen glimpses of this Alessio before, the one other men feared, the one who controlled an empire from the shadows, but never directed at me. "They recorded me," I admitted finally. The words like ash in my mouth made comments. "Nothing I can't handle." "Show me your phone." It wasn't a request. I hesitated, then reached for my purse on the side table. He took my phone gently but firmly, unlocked it with the code he'd memorized despite never asking for it, and began scrolling. I watched his face, trying to understand what he was looking for. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Checking something." His thumbs moved deftly across the screen. A video was posted tonight, tagged with Lorenzo's location. My breath caught. A video of me? He found what he was searching for, his expression hardening into something I barely recognized. Without a word, he turned the phone so I could see the screen. It was me, filmed from Table 7's vantage point. I was serving their water, my face flushed with embarrassment as they made comments just quiet enough that the microphone didn't catch them clearly. The caption read, "When the waitress thinks she's too good for a compliment, someone needs to be knocked down a peg." The comments underneath were worse. "Stuck-up bitch probably expects $50 tips for that attitude. 5'10" at best, acting like she's a model. I know where this place is. Maybe I should visit and see if she'll serve me better." Nausea rose in my throat as I saw the view count. 12,543 and climbing. It had only been posted 3 hours ago. "Alessio," I whispered, unable to formulate what I was feeling into words. He took the phone back, his movements controlled in a way that signaled danger more clearly than any outburst. Who are they? I don't know. Just customers. Names? They paid with a credit card. Marco would know, or... I stopped, realizing what I was saying. Alessio, please. It's just a stupid video. People will forget about it by tomorrow. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my heart race. Not with fear for myself, but fear for what he might do. No one speaks to my wife like that. No one films you without consent. No one humiliates you for entertainment. I placed my hand against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath the crisp fabric of his shirt. I'm fine. Really. You're not fine. I can see it in your eyes. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You should have called me. And what? Have you show up at Lorenzo's with your men? Create a scene? I've worked hard to keep these parts of my life separate. A shadow crossed his face. You're ashamed of me. No, I said quickly, grabbing his hand. Never that. I need something that's mine. Something normal. Being disrespected and exploited is normal? His voice remained soft, but there was steel beneath the velvet. Being recorded and mocked online is normal? Tears pricked at my eyes. That's not what I meant. He sighed, drawing me closer until my head rested against his shoulder. I breathed in his scent. Expensive cologne, a hint of whiskey. Something uniquely him that always made me feel safe, despite knowing exactly what he was capable of. I've respected your wishes, Teresa. I've let you keep this job, even though it kills me to see you exhausted, to know you're serving others when you should be treated like a queen. I've stayed away, kept my worlds from colliding with yours. His lips brushed my temple. But this I cannot ignore. A tear slipped down my cheek. What are you going to do? Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, amore mio. He wiped away my tear with his thumb. Just know that no one who disrespects you will ever do so again. His words should have frightened me. 9 months ago, they would have. But I'd learned that Alessio's moral code, while different from what society deemed acceptable, was unbreakable in its own way. His loyalty, once given, was absolute. His protection, all-encompassing. They don't know who I am, I said quietly. Who you are. They're just entitled jerks who thought it would be fun to mock the waitress. That's their mistake, he replied simply. One they'll regret. I wanted to argue further, to make him understand that this kind of retaliation would only blur the boundaries I'd worked so hard to maintain. But exhaustion swept over me suddenly, the weight of the night's humiliation compounding with the physical toll of my shift. Alessio sensed the change immediately. Without another word, he stood, lifting me effortlessly in his arms. He carried me to our bedroom, setting me gently on the edge of the vast bed, before kneeling to remove my socks. You don't have to do that, I murmured, embarrassed at being cared for like a child. Your feet are swollen, he observed, his thumbs pressing gently against my arches. You were on them for too long. I winced as he found a particularly tender spot. Occupational hazard. His eyes flicked up to mine. One you won't have to endure much longer. I tensed. Alessio, we agreed. That was before I saw you being treated like this. He rose, moving to the bathroom where I heard water running. Come. A bath will help. Too tired to argue, I followed him into the marble bathroom where he'd filled the massive tub with steaming water and bath oils that smelled of lavender and jasmine. In any other circumstance, I might have been moved by his tenderness. But I couldn't shake the cold certainty that somewhere in the city, 3 young men had no idea what was coming for them. Alessio, I tried one more time as he helped me undress. Promise me you won't do anything extreme. His eyes traveled over my body, not with the leering hunger of the men at table 7, but with a reverence that still made me blush after all these months. Define extreme. You know what I mean. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I promise they will suffer no permanent physical harm. Will that satisfy you? It wasn't the promise I wanted, but it was the most I would get. I nodded, stepping into the bath and sinking into its fragrant warmth. Alessio rolled up his sleeves, knelt beside the tub, and began washing my hair, his strong fingers massaging my scalp until I felt myself melting under his touch. "Why do you still do it?" he asked softly. "Work there, when you don't need to?" I closed my eyes, considering my answer carefully, because before you, it was all I had. My independence, my ability to take care of myself, even if it was just barely. And now it's a reminder that I'm still me, that I haven't disappeared into your world completely. His hands paused for a moment. "Do you feel trapped here? With me?" I opened my eyes to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "No. I feel transformed. Sometimes it's overwhelming, how quickly everything changed. Do you regret it?" The question hung between us, weighted with vulnerability I rarely glimpsed in him. "Never," I said firmly, reaching up to touch his face. "I love you, Alessio. I just need to hold on to pieces of who I was before you, so I don't lose myself entirely." Something in his expression softened. "I would never want you to lose yourself, your spirit, your independence. These are what drew me to you that night in the rain." The memory washed over me, standing at the bus stop, soaked and miserable, then seeing his window roll down. The choice I'd made that had altered the course of my life forever, I know. I whispered. He helped me finish bathing, then wrapped me in a plush towel, carrying me back to bed where he dried my hair with gentle hands. When he finally lay beside me, pulling me against his chest, I was nearly asleep. "Rest now," he murmured against my hair. "Tomorrow will be a new day." The promise in his words followed me into my dreams. I woke to an empty bed and the sound of quiet voices from the living room. Sunlight streamed through the windows we'd forgotten to close the curtains on, and for a moment, I simply lay there, letting the warmth bathe my skin. The digital clock on the nightstand read 10:17 a.m. I never slept this late, even on my days off. Wrapping myself in Alessio's silk robe, I padded toward the voices, stopping when I recognized Dante's deep rumble. Dante was Alessio's consigliere, his most trusted advisor, and the only one of his associates who had been at our wedding. If he was here on a Saturday morning, something significant was happening. "It's been handled," I heard Dante say. "The video has been removed from all platforms. No traces remain. And the three of them," Alessio's voice was calm, controlled. "Identified and located. Salvatore is tracking their movements now. We have addresses for all three. They'll be brought in tonight." My blood ran cold. Brought in. The euphemism hung in the air like a storm cloud. Good. "I want to handle this personally." Alessio's tone left no room for argument. "What did you find on them?" Papers rustled. "Jason Miller, 26, works at his father's investment firm. Lives in a high-rise downtown. Trust fund kid with a history of complaints from service workers, though nothing ever sticks because daddy's lawyers clean up his messes." Cold Eyes, I thought, the one who had been filming. Tyler Reynolds, 25, aspiring real estate broker. 3 DUIs in the past 2 years, charges reduced each time. Currently on probation, though he doesn't seem to take it seriously. Gel hair. And Michael Donnelly, 27. Works with Miller at the investment firm. 2 restraining orders from ex-girlfriends. Seems to have anger management issues. Patchy beard. The one who had touched my arm. "Their fathers?" Alessio asked. "Miller Sr. is well connected but not in our circles. Old money, political aspirations. Reynolds' father owns a chain of car dealerships, middle management at best. Donnelly comes from less. Father was a cop, now retired. Mother's a teacher." Alessio was silent for a moment. The cop connection could be problematic. Retired 5 years ago. Bad terms. Drinking problem. No loyalty there to worry about. Financial vulnerabilities? Miller has everything handed to him. Reynolds is in debt. Gambling mostly. Donnelly lives beyond his means, trying to keep up with his wealthier friends. I'd heard enough. I stepped into the living room, and both men turned immediately. Dante straightened from where he'd been leaning over a laptop, nodding respectfully. "Mrs. Vitale." "Teresa," Alessio said, his expression softening as he took me in. "You should be resting." I've rested enough. I tightened the robe around me, aware of my exposed legs and still damp hair. What are you planning, Alessio? Dante glanced between us, then gathered his papers. I'll wait downstairs. When the door closed behind him, Alessio approached me slowly, as if I were a wild animal he didn't want to startle. You heard. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then you know I'm taking care of it. The video is gone. Those men will never bother you again. Brought in, I quoted. What does that mean exactly? His jaw tightened. It means they will learn a lesson about respect. By terrifying them? Hurting them? Would you prefer I do nothing? A dangerous edge crept into his voice. Let them continue posting videos? Let other men see it and think they can treat you the same way? I crossed my arms over my chest, torn between the part of me that was horrified at what Alessio might do, and the smaller, darker part that wanted those men to pay for their cruelty. There has to be a middle ground, I said finally. Something that doesn't involve... I trailed off, unable to articulate what I feared. Alessio's expression remained impassive, but I'd learned to read the subtle tells that betrayed his emotions. The slight tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible flex of his jaw. What would you have me do, Teresa? He asked, his voice deceptively soft. Call the police? File a harassment complaint that will go nowhere? These men believe they can treat others as playthings for their amusement without consequences. I don't know, I admitted. But this, bringing them in, whatever that means, it feels extreme. He moved closer, his fingers grazing my cheek with a gentleness that contradicted the steel in his eyes. You didn't see what I saw in that video. The comments beneath it, the way they looked at you. I lived it, Alessio. I was there. Then you know they deserve whatever comes to them. I pulled away from his touch, frustration building inside me. This is exactly why I wanted to keep my job separate from your world. The moment they intersect, everything becomes this. I gestured between us. Suddenly I'm not just Teresa who waits tables. I'm Mrs. Vitale, and anyone who crosses me faces your wrath. Something flashed in his eyes, hurt, perhaps, or anger. You are Mrs. Vitale, my wife. The most precious person in my life. Did you think that was just a title? That I would stand by while you're humiliated? Of course not. But there's a difference between protecting me and whatever you're planning with Dante. Alessio ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare display of agitation. Those men chose to target someone they thought was powerless. They believed there would be no repercussions for their actions. They were wrong. I knew that look in his eyes, the quiet determination that brooked no argument. 9 months wasn't long enough to know all of Alessio's secrets, to understand fully what his business entailed. But it was long enough to know that once his mind was set, nothing would change it. Will you at least tell me what you're going to do? I asked, my voice small. He studied me for a long moment. Would knowing the details make you feel better? Or worse? The question hung between us, and I realized he was right. I didn't want to know. Not really. Like so many aspects of Alessio's life, I preferred the comfort of partial ignorance. Just promise me no one dies because of a stupid video, I said finally. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I already promised no permanent physical harm. I am a man of my word, Teresa. The way he specified physical harm didn't escape my notice, but I let it go. There was a boundary in our relationship, a line I rarely crossed when it came to his business dealings. It was part of our unspoken agreement. He kept that world away from me, and I didn't ask questions I didn't want answers to. I need to go into work today, I said, changing the subject. My shift starts at noon. Alessio's expression hardened. No, excuse me? You're not going back to Lorenzo's. Not today. Not ever. I stared at him, disbelief turning quickly to anger. You can't just decide that for me. I can, and I have. His tone was final. Those men know where you work. The video may be gone, but who knows how many people saw it before it was taken down. I won't risk your safety. My safety? I laughed without humor. They're obnoxious jerks, Alessio, not murderers. You'd be surprised how quickly one becomes the other. He took my hands in his his touch surprisingly gentle considering the tension radiating from him. "Teresa, please, for once, let me protect you without fighting me on it. By forcing me to quit my job, the one thing I've asked to keep for myself?" His eyes searched mine. "Is it worth this? Being mocked, filmed, degraded? Working until your feet swell and your back aches? For what? Tips that don't even cover your bus fare home?" "It's not about the money," I said, pulling my hands away. "It's about having something that's just mine, something normal." "Normal?" He practically spat the word. "You think those men treated you normally? You think Marco, who works you to exhaustion and sides with abusive customers, is giving you a normal experience?" I flinched at the truth in his words. "It's not always like that, isn't it?" Alessio's voice softened. "How many times have you come home with stories of customers who made inappropriate comments? How many times have you worked double shifts because Marco knows you won't say no? This job isn't your independence, Teresa. It's your cage." His words struck a nerve I hadn't realized was exposed. How many nights had I dragged myself home, feet throbbing, back aching, dignity in tatters? How many times had I swallowed my pride when customers treated me as less than human? But still, the thought of giving it up, of surrendering this last tie to the woman I was before Alessio, filled me with an inexplicable panic. "I need to shower," I said abruptly, turning away from him. "I'll be late." I felt his eyes on me as I retreated to the bathroom, closing the door between us with a quiet finality. Under the hot spray of water, I let the tears come, tears of frustration, confusion, and a strange grief for a life I was outgrowing but couldn't seem to let go of. By the time I emerged, dressed in my wrinkled uniform from the night before, Alessio was gone. A note on the kitchen counter simply read, "Car waiting downstairs. We'll talk tonight. A." I crumpled the note, equal parts relieved and disappointed that he hadn't stayed to continue our argument. Outside, as promised, the Bentley idled at the curb, Salvatore standing at attention beside it. "Mrs. Vitale," he greeted me, opening the door. "Just Teresa at work, remember?" I reminded him as I slid into the leather interior. Salvatore's expression remained impassive as he closed the door. A moment later, he was behind the wheel, pulling smoothly into traffic. "Lorenzo's?" he asked, his eyes finding mine in the rearview mirror. I hesitated, thinking of Alessio's words, the cage I couldn't seem to recognize. "Yes," I said finally. "Please." The drive was silent, tension thick in the air. I knew Salvatore reported everything to Alessio, where he took me, what time he dropped me off, whether I looked upset or tired. It was part of the invisible network of surveillance that surrounded me, one I pretended not to notice most days. As we approached Lorenzo's, I felt a strange tightening in my chest. The restaurant looked different somehow, smaller and shabbier than I remembered. Or perhaps I was the one who had changed, seeing it now through Alessio's eyes. "I'll wait," Salvatore said as he pulled to the curb. "That's not necessary. My shift ends at 8. His expression didn't change. Mr. Vitale's instructions were clear. "I'll be here." I knew better than to argue. With a sigh, I gathered my purse and stepped out of the car, feeling Salvatore's eyes on me until I pushed through Lorenzo's doors. The familiar smell of garlic and tomato sauce greeted me, along with Marco's perpetual scowl. "You're late," he barked, though a glance at the clock showed I was actually 5 minutes early. "Sorry," I said automatically, heading to the employee room to stow my purse. "Hey, wait," Marco called, following me. "I need to talk to you about last night." I tensed, turning slowly to face him. "What about last night?" Marco shifted uncomfortably, his usual bravado diminished. "Those guys at table 7, they didn't bother you too much, did they?" The question was so unexpected that I simply stared at him. "Since when do you care if customers bother me?" He ran a hand over his balding head. "Look, I heard they posted something online. A video." So he knew. "Yes, they did. It's gone now," he said quickly. "I checked this morning after I got a call." My pulse quickened. A call? From who? Marco avoided my eyes. "Doesn't matter. Just some guy saying the video had been taken down and that those three wouldn't be coming back to Lorenzo's. Ever. He paused, studying me with newfound wariness. Teresa, is there something you want to tell me? I kept my expression neutral. Like what? Like who you really are. Who your husband is. Ice shot through my veins. I don't know what you're talking about. Marco gave a humorless laugh. Come on, I'm not stupid. The way you showed up 9 months ago looking for any job. No experience, but desperate to work. The black car that picks you up sometimes. The way you never talk about your life outside of here. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. The call I got this morning wasn't just about a video. It was a warning. About how I've been treating the wife of Alessio Vitale. Hearing Alessio's name in this context, in Lorenzo's dingy break room, from Marco's mouth, felt like worlds colliding. I don't... Save it, Marco interrupted, raising his hands in surrender. I don't want to know details. I just want to know why. Why work here, dealing with assholes like those guys last night, when you're married to... He trailed off, clearly afraid to even speak Alessio's name again. I sank onto the bench, suddenly exhausted. Because it's normal, I said simply. Or it was supposed to be. Marco stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Normal? You think waiting tables in this dump is normal when you could be doing whatever it is his wife does? I wanted something that was just mine. Something that connected me to who I was before. The truth of it hit me with unexpected force. But it's not working anymore, is it? No, Marco agreed, a new respect in his voice. It's not. And after last night, I'm thinking you shouldn't come back. For everyone's safety, there it was. The decision made for me. Part of me wanted to argue, to insist that I could separate these worlds if I just tried harder. But Marco's fear-tinged expression told me everything I needed to know. The barrier between my two lives had already crumbled. I'll finish my shift today, I said quietly. Marco shook his head. No need. I'll pay you for the day, but... He glanced nervously toward the front of the restaurant. There's a guy in a suit who's been sitting at the bar since we opened, hasn't ordered anything but water, keeps watching the door. One of Alessio's men, no doubt. Watching, protecting, reminding Marco exactly who I belong to. I understand, I said, rising to my feet. I removed my apron and name tag, placing them on the bench with a finality that ached in my chest. I'll go. Marco nodded, relief evident in his posture. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About those guys last night. If I'd known who you were, you would have treated me differently. I finished for him. That's exactly why I never told you. I gathered my purse and walked out of Lorenzo's for the last time, the weight of my decision settling over me like a shroud. Outside, Salvatore stood beside the Bentley, appearing unsurprised to see me so soon. Home, Mrs. Vitale? He asked, opening the door. I paused, looking back at the restaurant, at the life I was leaving behind. No, I decided suddenly. Take me to Alessio. Something like approval flashed in Salvatore's eyes. He's at the club, preparing for tonight. The club was Alessio's legitimate business, a high-end establishment where the wealthy and powerful came to see and be seen. It was also, I suspected, where much of his not-so-legitimate business was conducted in private rooms upstairs. Then that's where I want to go, I said, sliding into the back seat. It's time I stopped pretending I can live in two worlds. The Ivory Room occupied the entire top floor of a historic building downtown, its entrance marked only by a discreet brass plaque and a suited doorman who knew exactly who to admit and who to turn away. As Salvatore pulled up to the curb, I felt a flutter of nervousness in my stomach. I'd been here before, of course, at Alessio's side for private dinners or special events, but never alone. Never during the day when the club was closed to patrons. The doorman recognized me immediately, nodding deferentially as he opened the heavy door. Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Vitale is in his office. Inside, the club was transformed by daylight. Without the evening's dim lighting and soft music, the space felt larger, its elegance more apparent in the polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers that now sparkled in the afternoon sun, filtering through tall windows. A skeleton crew of staff moved about, preparing for the evening, each pausing to acknowledge me with a respectful nod or murmured greeting. I made my way to the private elevator at the back, the one that led directly to Alessio's office and the rooms above where his most sensitive meetings took place. The elevator required a key card, which I extracted from my purse, a symbol of trust Alessio had given me early in our marriage, though I rarely used it. As the elevator ascended, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I still wore my Lorenzo's uniform, black pants and a white button-down shirt with the restaurant's logo embroidered on the chest. My hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, my face bare of makeup. I looked nothing like the woman who usually accompanied Alessio to this place, draped in designer dresses and carefully applied cosmetics. Yet for the first time, I felt more authentic in this moment than I had in months of straddling two worlds. The elevator doors slid open silently, revealing a plush hallway with only two doors. One to Alessio's office, the other to a private suite I'd never entered. From behind the office door, I could hear the low murmur of voices. I hesitated, suddenly unsure of my decision to come here, to insert myself into this aspect of Alessio's life I'd always kept at arm's length. Before I could second-guess myself further, the office door opened, and Dante emerged, his expression shifting from surprise to careful neutrality when he saw me. "Mrs. Vitale," he greeted me, stepping aside. "Alessio is inside." I nodded my thanks, moving past him into the office where Alessio stood behind a massive desk of dark wood, his back to the door as he gazed out floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He wore a charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, his dark hair neatly combed, every inch the powerful man others feared and respected. "I told you we'd have everything ready by tonight," he said without turning, clearly thinking I was Dante returning. "The arrangements are already—" He stopped as he turned and saw me, surprise flickering across his features before his expression softened. "Teresa." "I quit Lorenzo's," I said simply, the words hanging in the air between us. Alessio studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "I see." "You were right," I continued, moving further into the room. "It wasn't independence. It was a cage I couldn't recognize." He remained still, watching me approach with an intensity that might have frightened me once. "What changed your mind?" "Marco knew who I was, who you are." I stopped at the edge of his desk. "Someone called him this morning, about the video, about me being your wife." A muscle ticked in Alessio's jaw. "I see. Was it you?" I asked. "Did you call him?" "No." He circled the desk slowly, coming to stand before me, but I won't pretend to be sorry it happened. I believed him. Alessio never lied to me, even when the truth was difficult. It was one of the foundations of our relationship. His unwavering honesty, even as he kept certain details of his business shielded from me. "There was a man watching the restaurant," I said. "One of yours?" "Franco." Alessio nodded. "For your protection." He scared Marco enough that he basically fired me." I gave a humorless laugh. "Paid me for the day and suggested I not come back. For everyone's safety." Alessio's expression remained impassive, but I caught the satisfaction in his eyes. Marco finally showed good judgment. "You knew this would happen," I accused, though without real anger. "The moment those men posted that video, you knew my time at Lorenzo's was over." "I knew it was inevitable," he corrected, reaching to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "Though I expected more resistance from you." I leaned into his touch, surprised by the relief flooding through me. "I'm tired of pretending, Alessio. Tired of being two different people." Something like triumph flashed in his eyes. "And who are you now, Teresa? Which version is real?" It was a question I'd been asking myself since I walked out of Lorenzo's. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I want to find out, without hiding behind a job that makes me miserable just because it feels safe and familiar." Alessio cupped my face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the power I knew resided in those fingers. "I never wanted to take anything from you, amore mio. Only to give you everything you deserve. I know." I covered his hands with mine. "But there's something I need to ask you." His expression grew guarded. "What is that?" "Those men. The ones from last night." I swallowed hard. "What are you planning to do with them?" Alessio's hands dropped from my face, his posture straightening as he took a small step back. The subtle shift was like watching a door close, the loving husband receding, the dangerous businessman emerging. "You said you didn't want details," he reminded me. "I've changed my mind." I stood my ground. "If I'm truly accepting this life, accepting all of you, then I need to understand what that means. What you do to people who cross you, who cross me." He studied me, weighing my words, perhaps measuring my ability to handle the truth. "They'll be brought to the warehouse tonight, each one separately, so they don't draw courage from each other's presence. And then they'll learn what happens when they target someone under my protection." His voice was cool, detached. "First, they'll learn who you really are, who I am. The error in judgment they made when they chose to mock and film my wife." I suppressed a shiver. "And after that lesson? It depends on their response. If they show proper remorse, they'll be given a chance to make amends." "Amends how?" A smile touched Alessio's lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Financial contributions to causes benefiting service workers, substantial ones, along with public apologies posted to the same platforms where they shared their video." It wasn't what I'd expected, and if they refuse, then the lesson becomes more visceral. His expression hardened, but still within the parameters I promised you. No permanent physical harm. I tried to imagine it. These three arrogant young men confronted with the reality of who they'd chosen to target, faced with Alessio's quiet menace, and the knowledge of their own terrible mistake. Part of me recoiled at the thought, but another part, a darker part I rarely acknowledged, felt a thrill of satisfaction. "I want to be there," I said, the words surprising me as much as they clearly surprised Alessio. "Absolutely not." His response was immediate, brooking no argument. "Why?" I challenged. "If I'm truly your wife, if I'm accepting this life, why shouldn't I witness what happens to those who wrong me?" Alessio's eyes darkened. "Because I protect you from the ugliness of my world, Teresa. That was our agreement from the beginning." An agreement I'm questioning now. I moved closer to him, emboldened by the realization that I was changing, evolving into someone new, someone who was neither the desperate waitress nor the elegant, shielded wife, but something altogether different. "I've spent 9 months with one foot in each world, Alessio. It's not working anymore. If I'm stepping fully into yours, I need to understand what that means." "You think you want this," he said quietly. "But seeing men broken, even men who deserve it, changes you. It marks you. I don't want that for you." "I'm already changed," I whispered. "The moment I got into your car that night in the rain, everything changed. I've just been fighting it, holding on to scraps of my old life because I was afraid of disappearing into yours." Something shifted in Alessio's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. "And now you're not afraid." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But I'm more afraid of living halfway between worlds, belonging to neither." He considered me for a long moment, his gaze searching. "You truly want to witness this?" "I need to see what happens when someone hurts me in your world. I need to understand the consequences." Alessio ran a hand through his hair, a rare display of indecision. "There are parts of my business you should never see, Teresa. Lines I never want you to cross." "I'm not asking to be involved in your business," I clarified. "Just this. Just tonight." He was silent for so long I thought he would refuse. Finally he nodded, a single sharp movement. "On one condition. You stay with me at all times. You speak only when I indicate you may. And if at any point I tell you to leave, you do so without question." It wasn't really one condition, but I nodded anyway. Agreed. "Then be ready at 9. Wear something appropriate." "Appropriate for what?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "For meeting the men who thought they could humiliate Alessio Vitale's wife with impunity." The implication was clear. Tonight, I wouldn't be Teresa the waitress. I would be Mrs. Vitale in every sense of the title. "I should go home and change," I said, suddenly aware of my shabby uniform. Alessio shook his head. "I have meetings until evening. You'll stay here where I know you're safe." "Here?" I glanced around the office. "There's a suite through that door." He nodded toward the second door I'd noticed in the hallway. "Everything you need is there. Clothes, toiletries, rest. I'll join you when I'm finished." I shouldn't have been surprised. Of course, Alessio would have prepared for every contingency, including the possibility of me needing to stay at the club. "Do you often have women staying in your private suite?" I asked, a hint of jealousy coloring my tone despite myself. Alessio's expression darkened. "Only you, Teresa. Ever." His possessiveness should have bothered me once. Now it felt like an anchor in a shifting sea. "I believe you." He crossed to a sideboard and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. "I have one more meeting. Make yourself comfortable. Anything you want, just call down to the staff." I nodded, turning to leave. But he caught my wrist, pulling me back against his chest. His kiss was fierce, claiming. A physical manifestation of the possessiveness I'd come to understand was as much a part of him as his ruthless business acumen or his unexpected tenderness. 9 months, he murmured against my lips. 9 months I've watched you exhaust yourself at that restaurant, coming home with aching feet and wounded pride. 9 months I've honored your wish to keep your independence. His fingers threaded through my hair, cradling my head. "But you were never meant for that life, Teresa. You were meant for this. For me." The intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. "I know that now." He released me reluctantly, the business mask sliding back into place. 9 o'clock. I nodded, slipping through the door to the private suite. Inside, I found a space that was unmistakably designed with me in mind. Soft creams and blues, a plush bed with linens I recognized from our home, even framed photographs of us on the nightstand. A large closet revealed dresses in my size, shoes arranged neatly below. In the bathroom, I found my preferred brand of shampoo, my favorite perfume. Alessio had created this space for me long before today, preparing for the moment when I would finally step fully into his world. The realization both unnerved and touched me. How well he knew me, perhaps better than I knew myself. I showered, washing away the last traces of Lorenzo's, and wrapped myself in a silk robe I found hanging on the bathroom door. As I stretched out on the bed, exhaustion washed over me, not just physical tiredness, but the emotional fatigue of maintaining 2 separate lives for so long. As sleep claimed me, I wondered what version of myself would emerge tonight. Not Teresa the waitress, certainly, but perhaps not quite the carefully shielded Mrs. Vitale either. Someone new, someone stronger. Someone who would stand beside Alessio as he delivered justice to those who had wronged me and not look away. I woke to the sensation of fingers gently tracing the curve of my cheek. Opening my eyes, I found Alessio seated on the edge of the bed, his tie loosened, jacket discarded. The setting sun cast long shadows across the room, bathing everything in golden light. "What time is it?" I asked, my voice husky with sleep. "Just after 7. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You needed the rest." I sat up, clutching the silk robe around me. "Your meetings?" "Concluded." His eyes traveled over me with quiet appreciation. "I've had dinner sent up. You should eat before tonight." The mention of tonight sent a flutter of nerves through my stomach. I'd been so certain in my demand to witness what happened to the 3 men. But now, in the fading light of evening, doubt crept in. "Having second thoughts?" Alessio asked, reading my expression with his usual uncanny accuracy. "No," I said quickly, then amended, "Maybe. I don't know what to expect." He stood, moving to a covered tray on a nearby table. "Expect justice. Nothing more, nothing less." He lifted the silver dome, revealing a beautifully plated meal of seared scallops and risotto, my favorite. "Come, eat." I joined him at the small table, grateful for his thoughtfulness even as anxiety curled in my chest. "Will they be frightened?" "Yes." He poured wine into a crystal glass, offering it to me. "That's the point." I took a sip, letting the rich Barolo coat my tongue. "Will they be hurt?" Alessio's expression remained carefully neutral. "That depends on them, on their cooperation, their remorse." He studied me over the rim of his own glass. "Does that disturb you?" I considered the question honestly. "It should. I know it should. But when I think about what they did, how they made me feel, I broke off, surprised by the anger rising in me. A part of me wants them to suffer. That's natural, Alessio said, his voice gentle. They humiliated you, treated you as less than human. The desire for retribution is as old as humanity itself. But it's not right, I argued, more with myself than with him. Says who? He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. The law? The same law that would have done nothing if you'd reported them? The same law that lets men like Jason Miller walk free because his father's money shields him from consequences? I had no answer for that. In the 9 months since meeting Alessio, I'd come to understand that his moral code, while different from what society deemed acceptable, had its own internal logic. He valued loyalty above all, protected those under his care with ferocious dedication, and believed that actions should have proportionate consequences. Eat, he encouraged, gesturing to my untouched food. You'll need your strength. I obeyed, finding that despite my anxiety, I was ravenous. We ate in comfortable silence, the familiarity of sharing a meal with Alessio calming me in a way nothing else could. When we finished, he checked his watch. It's time to get ready, he said, rising. I've selected something for you to wear. He led me to the closet, withdrawing a garment bag I hadn't noticed earlier. Inside was a dress I'd never seen before. Deep burgundy, elegantly cut with a high neck and long sleeves. Conservative yet unmistakably expensive. It's beautiful, I said, running my fingers over the fine fabric. It's armor, Alessio replied. Tonight, you need to look like exactly who you are, my wife. Not a waitress they can mock with impunity. I understood then. The dress, the jewelry he produced next, a diamond pendant and matching earrings. They weren't just adornments. They were symbols of my position, of the protection I carried by being Alessio Vitale's wife. He left me to dress, returning when I called for him to zip the back of the gown. His fingers lingered at the nape of my neck, a gentle caress that belied the tension I felt radiating from him. Second thoughts? I echoed his earlier question. No. His eyes met mine in the mirror. But I want you to understand what happens tonight can't be undone. Once you see this side of my world, of me, we cross a line. I turned to face him, taking in his immaculate appearance. He'd changed into a fresh suit, black as midnight, with a tie that matched my dress perfectly. His hair was combed back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. He looked dangerous, powerful, every inch the man others feared. I'm ready, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. His eyes searched mine for a moment before he nodded, apparently satisfied with what he found. Then let's go. We took his private elevator down to the parking garage where Salvatore waited with the Bentley. The drive was silent, tension building with each passing minute as we left the gleaming downtown buildings behind, heading toward the industrial district by the river. The warehouse appeared ordinary from the outside, a nondescript building with no signs or markings, just one of many in the row of similar structures. The only indication of its significance was the 2 black SUVs parked near the entrance and the men standing guard, who straightened as our car approached. Salvatore opened my door, his expression revealing nothing as he helped me out. Alessio placed his hand at the small of my back, a reassuring pressure as we walked toward the entrance. Inside, the warehouse was surprisingly clean. The concrete floor polished, the lighting stark but even. A large open space contained nothing but 3 chairs positioned several yards apart, each occupied by a man whose hands appeared to be bound behind his back. Dante stood to one side, along with 4 other men I recognized from Alessio's security detail. The 3 young men from Lorenzo's looked dramatically different from the cocky customers who had mocked me. Their expensive suits were rumpled, their faces pale with fear. Cold Eyes, Jason, sat rigidly in his chair, jaw clenched in defiance. Gel hair, Tyler, couldn't stop nervously shifting, his eyes darting around the room. Patchy beard, Michael, had his head bowed, shoulders slumped in defeat. They didn't notice our entrance at first, giving me a moment to steady myself. Alessio's hand tightened slightly at my waist. Remember our agreement, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. Stay beside me. Speak only when I indicate, and if I tell you to leave, I go without question, I finished. I understand. He nodded once, then straightened to his full height, his presence seeming to fill the cavernous space. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying easily across the room. All three heads snapped up, fear evident in their expressions as they registered Alessio's presence. Then, almost in unison, their eyes shifted to me, confusion replacing fear for a brief moment before horrified recognition dawned. "The waitress," Jason whispered, the blood draining from his face. Alessio guided me forward, his pace unhurried as we approached the center of the room. "Not just a waitress," he corrected, his tone conversational, yet somehow more terrifying for its calm. "My wife, Mrs. Teresa Vitale." The name hung in the air, and I watched as its significance registered with each of them. Tyler's nervous fidgeting stopped abruptly, his body going completely still. Michael raised his head, eyes wide with dawning terror. Jason's defiance cracked, fear seeping through. "You didn't know," Alessio continued, circling behind them slowly while keeping me at his side. "You thought she was just a server you could mock, film, humiliate online for your amusement. No consequences, no repercussions." He stopped behind Jason's chair, placing his hands on the young man's shoulders. "A grave miscalculation." "We didn't," Jason began, his voice cracking. "Silence," Alessio said softly, but with such authority that Jason's mouth snapped shut immediately. "You speak when spoken to." The warehouse fell so quiet I could hear the shallow, panicked breathing of all three men. Alessio moved to stand before them, drawing me gently to his side. "My wife believes in second chances," he said, his eyes moving between the three terrified faces. "She has asked me to show mercy, to let you make amends for your disrespect." Hope flickered in their expressions, quickly tempered by wariness. "But first," Alessio continued, "I want you to understand exactly what you did, what you participated in." He turned to me, his expression softening marginally. "Teresa, would you like to tell them?" All eyes turned to me, and for a moment I froze. Then I thought of the humiliation I'd felt, the helplessness as they recorded me, the violation of seeing myself mocked online. "You treated me like I wasn't human," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Like I was an object for your entertainment. You filmed me without consent. You posted it online where thousands of people could see me being humiliated." Michael's head dropped again in shame. Tyler stared at the floor. Only Jason maintained eye contact, though fear had replaced his earlier arrogance. "Do you know what that feels like?" I continued, finding my courage. "To know strangers are laughing at you? To wonder if everyone who looks at you has seen that video? To feel unsafe in your workplace?" "I'm sorry," Michael mumbled, his voice barely audible. Alessio moved to stand behind him. Louder. "I'm sorry," Michael repeated, his voice breaking. "I didn't think. We were just messing around. We didn't know who you were." "That's your first mistake," Alessio cut in, "believing it would be acceptable to treat anyone that way, regardless of who they are." His eyes narrowed. "But yes. Your second mistake was choosing my wife as your target." "What are you going to do to us?" Tyler asked, terror evident in his voice. Alessio regarded him coldly. "That depends on you, on whether you're genuinely remorseful, on whether you're willing to make proper amends." "Anything," Tyler said quickly. "Please, Mr. Vitale, we'll do anything." "Will you?" Alessio turned to Jason, who had remained silent. "And you? Are you prepared to make amends for disrespecting my wife?" Jason swallowed hard, his earlier defiance evaporating under Alessio's steady gaze. "Yes," he whispered. "Good." Alessio nodded to Dante, who approached with a laptop. "Then here's what happens next. Each of you will make a substantial donation to the Service Workers' Rights Fund. For you, Jason, given your family's resources, that amount is $250,000. Jason's eyes widened. 200 and... "Would you prefer an alternative arrangement?" Alessio asked softly. No, I'll pay. I'll pay right now." "Tyler, your contribution will be $75,000. Tyler nodded frantically. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "And Michael, $50,000. Michael looked up, relief washing over his face. "Yes, of course. Additionally," Alessio continued, You will each post public apologies on your social media accounts, acknowledging your behavior and its consequences. The wording will be provided to you." "Is that it?" Jason asked, then quickly added, "I mean, yes, absolutely." Alessio's expression remained impassive. "Almost. One final condition." He turned to me, his eyes softening slightly. "Teresa, is there anything specific you would like from these men?" I hadn't expected this, the opportunity to name my own terms. I looked at the 3 frightened faces before me, men who had towered over me at Lorenzo's but now seemed small and pathetic. What did I want from them? "I want you to work in service for 1 month," I said finally. "Each of you, waiting tables, cleaning dishes, whatever the hardest job is, and I want proof that you did it." Surprise flickered across Alessio's face, followed by something like pride. "An excellent suggestion. Dante will arrange appropriate placements. You will report daily, complete your shifts without complaint, and treat every colleague and customer with respect." Relief washed over their faces. Clearly they had expected much worse. "If any of these conditions are not met," Alessio added, his voice hardening, "we will have another conversation, one far less pleasant." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable in its clarity. "Do we understand each other?" Alessio asked. All 3 nodded vigorously. "Verbal answers," he commanded. "Yes, sir," they chorused. "Good." He turned to Dante. "Process the donations now, then release them one at a time, 30 minutes apart. Different drivers, different routes." "Yes, boss," Dante replied, moving toward Jason first with the laptop. Alessio placed his hand on the small of my back again, guiding me toward the exit. "We're finished here." As we walked away, I glanced back at the 3 men who had tormented me just 24 hours earlier. They looked broken, humbled, utterly transformed by fear and the reality of consequences. I should have felt satisfaction, perhaps even vindication. Instead, I felt something more complex, a mixture of relief, closure, and a strange kind of power I'd never experienced before. Outside, the night air was cool against my flushed cheeks. Alessio studied me as Salvatore held the car door. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. I considered the question, searching my feelings honestly. "No," I said finally, "but I don't think I need to see anything like that again." A smile touched his lips. One glimpse behind the curtain was enough? More than enough. I reached for his hand, lacing my fingers through his. "Thank you for letting me choose their punishment. The service work." "It was inspired," he said, helping me into the car. "Fitting." Just. As Salvatore drove us back toward the city, I leaned against Alessio's shoulder, feeling the tension of the past 24 hours slowly dissipate. The humiliation of Lorenzo's, the argument this morning, the confrontation at the warehouse. It all seemed to recede, leaving only the certainty that I had finally stopped living between worlds. "What now?" I asked as we watched the city lights approach. Alessio's arm tightened around me. "Whatever you want, Teresa. You don't have to work at Lorenzo's, but that doesn't mean you can't find something that's yours. Something worthy of your talents." I considered this, the freedom of possibilities stretching before me. I've always wanted to finish my degree. Maybe open a small bookshop someday. "Then that's what you'll do," he said simply, as if making it so required nothing more than his word. Perhaps, in his world, it didn't. As we pulled up to our building, the doorman rushing to open my door, I realized that the woman who had left this morning, trapped between worlds, clinging desperately to a false independence, was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who understood that true freedom wasn't found in waiting tables or taking buses in the rain. It was found in accepting who I was, who I loved, and the life we would build together, one that didn't require me to be less than I could be. Alessio helped me from the car, his hand warm and steady in mine as we walked into the lobby. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments to this life I was fully embracing. But tonight, as the elevator carried us toward our penthouse, I felt only certainty. I was Teresa Vitale, not a waitress playing at Independence, not a wife hiding from her husband's world, just me, finally whole, finally